Today we will study the laws of Yichud as they apply in contemporary society. If you recall, in the last shiur, we gave a conceptual framework for Yichud. We spoke about Yichud d'oraisa, Yichud d'Rabbanan, and we got into a little bit of the question of how to define Yichud. Today, what we want to cover is Yichud in actual situations, and to see how the Psak Halacha develops with regard to the laws of Yichud. I want to mention, by way of introduction, that we'll be covering 5 areas, Mirz Hashem, of the laws of Yichud as they apply today in our time. We'll have to study a lot of texts, some we'll have to read inside, many of which I've taken a lot of time to translate into English for the benefit of an English-speaking audience. The 5 topics that Mirz Hashem will cover, some of them in the first year today, and some in the next year, the last year in the series, are Yichud and the working woman. A woman who works amongst non-Jews specifically, and the issues of being alone with her employer. The second issue that we want to address is Yichud and the physician, specifically the issue of medical examinations, which are very relevant and common and have to be addressed from the perspective of Yichud. The third is Yichud and the elevator. Modern technology has brought new questions to the floor in terms of Yichud, and one of them is the elevator. And then, of course, the question of Yichud in an automobile, which again was unknown to Chazal, but we'll see how the Torah principles apply. And finally, the case of Yichud in adoption, because adoption has become such a commonality in our time. By way of introduction, let me emphasize that what's fascinating about this study is that above and beyond the focus on Yichud in a limited way, we're going to see, through the laws of Yichud, the principles that the poskim use to determine halacha. In the decision-making process of halacha, there are many principles. We'll see them in Yichud, but they apply throughout. And I think, therefore, it's very important for us to all be on board to study how halacha operates. And the studies of the laws of Yichud will give us some of the keys, some of the principles, beyond the confines of the laws of Yichud, with which we can understand halacha, and specifically the process of defining halacha. I would like to mention 10 examples very quickly. They'll be very abstract. And we'll see through the laws of Yichud, as we go through them, how these 10 rules play such a major role. The first rule is the study of the dialectic of halacha. In other words, the theoretical analysis, what we call lumdus of halacha, which plays, as we'll see, such a key role in deciding halacha. In fact, when we cover the case of Yichud in an elevator, we'll see that the entire issue hinges on a theoretical construct, a category, a definition, in very precise terms of what Yichud is all about. Then we'll have to study the principle of a specific case, mentioned either in the Gemara or in the Rishonim in the Poskim, and how to create a category out of that specific case. So the halacha can develop an answer to questions by analogy in taking that case and going beyond the case. In a sense, it's conceptualizing the case. We'll see this so critically in the issue of Yichud and adoption. The third rule that I'd like to cover with you, in a case of safek, in a case of doubt, that it's interesting that when a question is presented to a halachic decisor, a posek, he may recommend to the questioner that a condition be fulfilled, add something to change the reality, and in so doing reduce the situation, in the worst scenario, from an Isur d'oraisa to a d'Rabbanan, to a rabbinic enactment. If it's only a violation of a rabbinic enactment, then since we have a suffix here, we can apply the rule of suffix d'Rabbanan l'kula. So we're going to actively change the reality so that we can apply a particular halachic rule of Safek D'Rabbanan L'Kul. This is a fascinating move on the part of the poskim, and we'll see how critical of a role it plays with regard to Yichud and the automobile, when a man and a woman are traveling together in a car alone together at night. A fourth principle, which is very, very important in halacha, and we'll see it only with regard to psak halacha, that if there's an argument, if there's a logical reasoning, which in and of itself would not generate a leniency, it's not powerful enough, we still don't disregard it. It's still worth something. We can use it as what the poskim call a sniff, so that if we have other reasons to be lenient, even if those other reasons of themselves are insufficient, we can add them together. So we can take a half-baked argument, add it to